Yo, what is up, everybody? So there's this new topic that I've actually been running the idea around in my mind for a bit. It's a little bit out there, a little bit far-fetched, something that you're not very much used to, but I really want to talk about a childhood classic, Powerpuff Girls. And I want to talk about some things that you guys might not have thought about comparing it to, such as Frankenstein and Full Metal Alchemist. My name is Wilkie Castro, and this is Talking Shots. Chief, it's the return of the blade and slice shade, getting paid into my silhouette fades. All right, so for those of you who might be living under a rock or never got to experience Powerpuff Girls, I'll just give you a quick synopsis. Basically, you have the professor, this super genius who tries to create the perfect little girl, and by accident, something goes wrong in his experiment, and he ends up creating the Powerpuff Girls. 3 little girls with different personalities who have superpowers, look super weird, and just kind of fight bad guys and save the day. You know, sounds really cute on the surface level. But let's take a deeper look into it. So we have the professor, a super genius who has no immediate family that we know of. He has no girlfriend, no wife. We don't even know if he has brothers or sisters. So all we know is that he's lonely, and he's a super genius who uses his abilities as a scientist to try to emulate and create the perfect little girl, AKA play God and create perfection where God has not yet done. As in the professor's eyes, he believes that he needs to create perfection from his own hubris or his own scientific mind. He makes a mistake while trying, this experiment of creating the perfect thing, the perfect little girl, as said in the opening credits, and instead he creates 3 super-powered homunculi. Now, when you think about it in that context, doesn't that sound a little bit familiar? Yeah, if you're a little bit of a literary buff like I am, because I've read a lot of the classics, that sounds a lot like Frankenstein. But it also is familiar to something that's a lot more recent, which you guys might not have thought of, but Full Metal Alchemist, for a lot of my anime heads out there, has a similar plot. 2 kids try to create life where it is lost, and instead they end up creating what is literally referred to in the American dub of the series as homunculi. Now, let me just delve a little bit deeper into the terminology of homunculi. If you look it up, hopefully Mike is a genius and could get the Google definition. A homunculi, in one of the definitions, is described as a small humanoid creature, not a human, a humanoid creature, something that is attempting to be human-like. And I think that is the perfect definition for the Powerpuff Girls. They have human enough traits, but they look like no human. Their heads are way out of proportion with the rest of their body. They're missing appendages. They're drawn noseless. They're missing fingers. They're almost like dolls that have just come to life with superpowers. And they're very small, such as the definition of a homunculus. So let's actually get into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. If you guys have never read the books and only know it from the movie, it's way different than the movies or whatever lore you might have found out from pop culture. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is actually about, it's this doctor, Dr. Frankenstein, who creates this creature, which is actually nameless. It's not called Frankenstein, that's just misinterpretation by Hollywood. So he is so caught up in his own hubris, his own pride as a scientist, that he thinks he could create life and play God. What the book ends up going off for from there, the creature is pretty much rejected by society for not being an actual human. They could kind of just sense that it's a bastardization of nature, and nature itself ends up punishing the doctor through a myriad of ways. I recommend you read the book to kind of show him that he cannot play God and he cannot mess with nature no matter how smart he thinks he is. Kind of goes back to the old thematic of science versus nature, which, like I said, ties into the Powerpuff Girls. 2, let's also get into Full Metal Alchemist. Pretty much these 2 little boys end up losing their mom, who they're incredibly close to because their father's a piece of shit and leaves them when they're kids. And she ends up dying, and they try using alchemy, their type of science in their world, to transmutate a human. Equivalent exchange, they end up losing body parts and the body of the youngest brother, Alphonse Elric. Instead of actually bringing their mother back to life, they are punished for trying to play God by creating this humanoid creature, this pile of waste and filth that is almost alive and moving, but it is not anything near what their mother is. They realize that they have caused the ultimate sin, and decide to burn their house down with whatever it is they created, supposedly dying in that fire. Watch the series, I don't want to give any spoilers out. Now you're seeing the comparisons that you could draw between Powerpuff Girls and these 2, but there's a glaring difference. And what you might be thinking is, well, Wilkie, in Frankenstein and in Full Metal Alchemist, both the creators or both the people playing God are punished, the professor is never really punished, and the girls are never really rejected from society, such as the other homunculi, or, you know, the creature in Frankenstein or the homunculus in Full Metal Alchemist are truly punished. And that's where Powerpuff Girls differs, and that's where it becomes interesting. What turns a lot of people away from this ideology is that it doesn't fit in those exact storylines, in the concept of the professor's never punished. And that's because in this world, his freak accident is actually celebrated. And then the deformities, which usually cause other characters rejection, such as the deformities of the Powerpuff Girls, having no fingers, looking like giant dolls, and just being weird and superpowered and different, actually leads them to be revered by the people of Townsville, the city that they live in, or the Townsville that they live in. They're kind of just regarded as heroes. People never really mention that they look weird as all hell and everything that looks wrong. And that's where the character archetypes start playing a very big role. The Powerpuff Girls are kind of like the ideal children, you know, capturing different traditional childlike personalities and adapting them to each girl and making them so important to their character. You know, Blossom is the responsible one, Buttercup is the more tomboyish one who's more focused on the violence, and then Bubbles is the more sweetheart, girly girl, you know, like little cute, adorable daughter that, you know, people would, you know, typically revere. How does that tie into the story? Now start thinking about almost any villain. Think about the first villain from Powerpuff Girls that comes to your mind. For many of you, it's him, literally the character him, who looks like a mixture between a drag queen and the devil. Now let's think about some of the other ones. Mojo Jojo, very incredibly famous throughout the show, one of their main villains, one of the most active and reoccurring villains. He's kind of rejected from society also by looking different. He wears an evil outfit, he has a gigantic brain, he's super smart, but he's still a monkey, so people don't really understand how to interact with him. Let's pick another one, Fuzzy Lumpkin. Literally this big fuzzy animal monstrosity thing that, again, would normally not be accepted into society, and they're not. That is one of kind of what I think gives them a lot of motivation as characters, that alone. They kind of want to get revenge on this society that has left them high and dry to the point that it turns them to evil. They want to get revenge on all these people who have ever treated them different, but also envy the Powerpuff Girls. They envy Blossom, Buttercup, and Bubbles for being accepted even though they are different in a different aspect. So one of the most important themes that I think gets overlooked by people is this idea of vanity, the idea of the American standard and how it's accepted. These girls are representations of this American standard while the villains are not, especially during the time period in the early 2000s where not a lot of LGBTQ plus people were being accepted. Where just being different, just looking different or speaking a different type of way would get you outcasted by society. And you could even see it reflected in the archetypes of the characters. Fuzzy Lumpkin is supposed to represent an ignorant hillbilly or a redneck or however you want to interpret him. And he lives on the outskirts of like the city, living all by himself because he has been rejected by society because he does not fit this mold or ideal. Continue to think about any of the other villains. The Green Gang, rejected because they look different. Kind of, okay, I know it's not just me, but they all kind of look like Hispanic immigrants. They kind of have that very Spanish design and they're green. The Amoeba Boys, they look different. They're three giant amoebas that are like, you know, old school 1950s thieves. Almost any character that doesn't either physically fit the ideal of the people of Townsville are rejected. And even those that physically look normal, such as Medusa, I think that was her name, but you know, the Medusa chick. Even though she physically, before she reveals herself, looks normal, her ideologies are rejected because they're so abnormal, or her thought process and how she commits her crimes are so different from, you know, the good, hardworking Americans of Townsville. And it really creates this area for discussion. I know a lot about the creator of the show, Craig McCracken. He's one of my favorite animators. He went on from the Powerpuff Girls to make Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Yonder Over Wander, which is a very great, another great show, which was on Disney. And I know that he didn't really recognize this until later, where he actually makes an episode where he kind of acknowledges that his characters have a very close similarity to Frankenstein. And if you guys don't know which episode I'm talking about, It's the episode with Bunny. Professor Utonium attempts again to play God in hopes to create another sibling for the Powerpuff Girls. Instead, he tries to do everything by the book, and instead of random chance, leaves nothing up to chance and tries to recreate his experiment as closely as possible, but instead he creates a Frankenstein-esque creature himself, which is then later referred to as Bunny, who's unstable, who is, chemically not fit for that world, even though physically on the outside, she's kind of not accepted, but it's the goodness inside her heart that gets her accepted, the reflection of her character and how that fits into the moral ideologies of the people of Townsville. She has a good-natured heart, which is why by the end of the episode, she's accepted and kind of cried over once she dies. Spoiler alert, yeah, she dies by the end of the episode, sorry. It's also interesting to think about is the fact that Mojo Jojo is slightly less smart than Professor Utonium because of his attempts at creating the Rowdy Rough Boys, who are a male equivalent of the Powerpuff Girls, but even his experiment doesn't come close to the atomic structure, their compounds and how they work. They're not as stable as the Powerpuff Girls, and you see that by the end of the episode. Spoiler, they die because they get kissed on the cheek and they die to cooties. So you see they're not as well constructed. So it's really strange when you think about it, because instead of being punished by the forces of nature, as with every other literary interpretation of this type of, story arc, the professor is kind of rewarded for playing God. He's rewarded with now his chance at having a family. He's rewarded, and there are no real repercussions besides, having to worry about his new daughters, which is just him having to face the facts that now he is a father to these creatures he created. And it's very interesting because you kind of start thinking a little bit about the fact that the professor is so smart, so at one point or another you would think that he would have some repercussions to wanting to play God, but that's just not the case. What do you guys think about this theory that I've just been conjuring up, contemplating about? Because I've had this conversation a few times and people have tried to poke holes in it, but I think it's kind of not hole-proof or bulletproof as an idea or a topic for debate, but I think it leads to a whole other debate about how the stereotypical societal aspects of American culture get portrayed through something as simple as the medium of a children's cartoon. Do you guys think I'm just full of it and just, pulling shit out of my ass? Or do you really think that maybe more so that's what the creator was going for, or the type of things he wanted to be seen from the way he sets up the story? Because a lot of these evidences that I use are shown just within the opening credits. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Remember, always follow us on social media: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google us, show your friends, and we'll be back to bring more videos and content for you guys in the future. Again, my name is Wilkie Crass the Kid Castro, and this is Talking Shots. How long was that?